The mystery of Gabby Petito. The hidden clues that could reveal the truth. Before you start this video, subscribe to the channel World of Letters, a story to remember. Gabby Petito was much more than a name in the headlines. She was a young woman, full of life, passionate about adventure with a dream. To travel across the United States, recording everything on her channel. Her free spirit and captivating personality made her an inspiration to many. However, behind the smiles and the incredible landscape she shared, there were subtle signs of a drama that few noticed in time. The daughter of a loving family, Gabby grew up surrounded by affection and encouragement to follow her dreams. Her relationship with Brian Laundrie seemed at first glance like a modern fairy tale, a young couple exploring the world together. But as in many stories, not everything was as it seemed. What seemed like a romantic journey hid layers of tension, misunderstandings, and episodes that today make many wonder, was there something darker going on? Brian Laundrie entered Gabby's life as a travel and love partner, but accounts from friends and family suggest that he also had a possessive and controlling side. Small details on social media and accounts from acquaintances point to a relationship that, at times, seemed suffocating. But how do you distinguish a common couple's fight from a warning sign of something more dangerous? Her travel videos showed stunning landscapes and moments of pure joy. However, if you look more closely, you can see a pattern. In some recordings, Gabby seems restless, avoiding certain gestures or glances, small signs that today sound like silent screams. Those who watch it now with the knowledge of what happened feel a chill down their spine when they notice these details. At first, everything seemed like a shared dream. The couple set off in their van, enthusiastically recording each stop. But this trip would soon turn into a nightmare. As the days passed, signs that something was wrong began to emerge. Arguments became frequent, and those who crossed paths with Gabby and Brian reported a tense atmosphere between the two. The first warnings came from strangers who passed them on the road. Some people noticed intense arguments, but as with many cases of abusive relationships, no one wanted to get directly involved. After all, it's the old adage, it's none of my business. But in retrospect, perhaps someone could have changed the course of events if they had paid more attention. The dream trip turned into a story of increasing tension. At one of the stops, witnesses reported seeing Gabby crying, visibly shaken. Brian, on the other hand, seemed cold, distant, as if he were trying to control the situation. Small signs that, when added together, could have revealed the truth long before the worst happened. Gabby and Brian shared an intense routine on the road, and anyone who has ever traveled long distances with another person knows how that can create friction. But there's a big difference between natural misunderstandings and a pattern of toxic behavior. The difference was in the details, the glances, the silences, the unspoken words, little pieces of a dark puzzle. Gabby's parents had always been very close to her, but during the trip, their communication began to become more sporadic. Messages took longer to be answered, and when they did arrive, they were shorter and more vague. For a young woman who used to share everything, this change didn't go unnoticed by her family. The world only started to pay attention when the disappearance was reported. But looking back, the signs were all there. Moments captured on video, cryptic posts, subtle changes in Gabby's behavior. What had seemed like just a happy couple's trip now turned into a harrowing mystery. When Brian Laundrie returned home alone, without Gabby, and with no clear explanation, everything changed. Gabby's family knew something was wrong. The public began to wonder, how could someone just disappear without a trace? And more importantly, how could someone come home and act as if nothing had happened? The internet quickly mobilized in search of answers. Amateur detectives analyzed every detail of the videos and photos Gabby posted. Comments, expressions, old messages. Everything was seen in a new light. And as the days passed, new revelations began to emerge. The question that wouldn't go away: where was Gabby? Friends, family, and even strangers began to investigate clues and pressure the authorities for answers. Small details, previously ignored, now seemed crucial to understanding what really happened. But time was running out against the chances of finding her alive. Then came the most feared revelation. Gabby's body was found in a national park. The dream trip ended in the worst possible way. But what exactly happened? What didn't Brian Laundrie want anyone to know? And, even more intriguing, what were the mistakes that could have been avoided before this tragedy happened? Gabby and Brian's relationship. At first glance, Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie's relationship seemed like any other young couple's. However, as time went by, signs that something was not right began to emerge. What began as a love story between two young adventurers soon turned into a nightmare. The couple decided to take a caravan trip across the United States, sharing every moment on social media. But what many didn't know was that, behind the scenes, their relationship was far from perfect. They were often seen arguing, and in some cases it seemed that Brian was exerting excessive control over Gabby, which raised suspicions of an abusive relationship. The combination of constant tension and fighting would become the setting for one of the most tragic cases in recent history. In many stories of troubled relationships, the signs of abuse are subtle at first. With Gabby and Brian, Brian's controlling behavior seemed to start to become more and more obvious. For example, Gabby was constantly trying to please Brian, while at the same time hiding any signs of discomfort with the situation. One of the aspects that caught the most attention was the fact that Gabby started posting on social media more frequently, but at the same time, the quality of her posts dropped dramatically. Her messages and photos, previously full of enthusiasm, began to reflect growing tension, but she didn't talk openly about it. A cycle that many can recognize, trying to keep up appearances when in reality things were going downhill. Meanwhile, Brian Laundrie, on the other hand, seemed to be the opposite of Gabby in many ways. He had a more introspective personality, but he was also possessive, a factor that further aggravated the fights and arguments between the two. The dynamics of their relationship became increasingly complex. The arguments were becoming more intense and frequent, with Brian often getting angry over small things and controlling Gabby's behavior, which raised the question, was Gabby being forced to live under Brian's thumb? And at the same time, Brian seemed to be fighting his own demons with cryptic messages and behaviors that later could be seen as evidence of an increasingly unstable person. In this context, Gabby Petito's disappearance was not an isolated event, but rather the culmination of a series of signs that, if they had been observed more closely, could have changed the course of events. Tensions between the couple built up over the days and weeks, and what should have been a journey of discovery ended up becoming an emotional battleground. Indeed, those who follow true crime stories know that often the first step to avoiding a tragedy is recognizing the dynamics of an abusive relationship and taking action before it's too late. In addition, there is something very peculiar about the cryptic messages exchanged between Gabby and her friends shortly before her disappearance. Many wonder if she was somehow trying to ask for help without Brian knowing. Could this be a way of signaling to people that something was wrong? There is no doubt that the hidden evidence may have been key to unraveling the truth about what really happened to Gabby. These cryptic messages could, who knows, shed a little more light on what was going on in Gabby and Brian's lives in the final moments before her death. The signs that something was wrong in Gabby and Brian's relationship were everywhere, but no one noticed them as carefully as they should have. Often, people around those in abusive relationships don't notice the signs until it's too late. Gabby Petito's case is a painful reminder that we shouldn't ignore the small signs and seemingly insignificant gestures. We know that when it comes to missing people, it's important to act quickly. But why did the police ignore the evidence that was right in front of them? That's a question many still ask themselves. By the time Gabby's disappearance was reported, it was already too late. She was far from home in a vulnerable state, and the help she could have received came too late. However, it's important to remember that Gabby Petito's case was not isolated, and thousands of other people go missing every day. Many of them victims of abusive relationships, like Gabby and Brian's. As a society, we must learn to look for the signs and, when necessary, act with more urgency and empathy. Gabby Petito's case was a wake-up call for all of us, a reminder of how important it is to be aware of the signs of abuse and to recognize when something is not right. What happened to Gabby can happen to anyone, and that is why the fight against domestic violence must continue. We must be alert to these signs and ensure that victims receive the support and help they so desperately need. May Gabby Petito's tragedy not be forgotten, and may her story be a catalyst for the change we so desperately need.